Crusades, a primer. We are not going to go in depth on all the Crusades, but I want to give you an overview of what's going on. We start by understanding this is 1096 to 1204. By 1096, you have these fully formed feudal kingdoms in existence. But you also, of course, have the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople itself has so much money. They are at the crossroads of all the water and overland routes in and out of Europe. They can afford to pay for mercenary armies. But with the rise of a new Islamic power called the Seljuk Turks, who are going to start asserting themselves, and they start making inroads on the Byzantine Empire and marching towards Constantinople, and that is where our story really begins. Alexius Comnenus. He is the Byzantine emperor, from 1048 to 1118. Realizing he can't buy his way out of this one, will call on the help of the Western powers. He actually does get in touch with Pope Urban II, and Pope Urban II, in a famous speech, will call on the First Crusade to take back the Holy Land. Now, wait, we are talking about this. This is the Holy Land down here. But this is Constantinople. Alexius Comnenus was asking for help with this. Pope Urban II calls for a crusade to take back this. I am no geography expert, but I don't think those are the same places. Anyways, the First Crusade. It's 100,000 people marching. They're coming from all over Europe. The problem is Alexius Comnenus actually wanted like 5,000, 10,000 maybe. He got 100,000. He doesn't know what to do. He's scared of this. Now he does set up these kind of way stations where people can get food and stay along the way as they're coming across his domain. But the thing is, along here, what you're really looking at is stadium pricing. We've all gotten that like $10 hot dog. It's that kind of pricing. So when these people do arrive in Constantinople, they're basically broke. And then they get to Constantinople, and they find that the doors of the city are shut to them. You just marched across Europe to help Alexius Comnenus defend his empire and possibly take the Holy Land. And when you get to the greatest city in Christianity, you're not even allowed to enter and see it. Back to the story. Totally successful. 100%. Right? The Crusading army actually soundly defeats the Seljuks. They take all of this land around Jerusalem and Edessa and Antioch. They push them back. They create a kingdom of Jerusalem. They actually set up a king of Jerusalem, and therefore nobles and knights and all the thing. Everything they wanted, really, they truly achieved. It was an utter success. This may be the only successful one. Second Crusade, 1147 to 1149. So if you want to think about it, it's 48 years later, new generation, etc., etc. At this point, the Seljuks have made a solid attempt to kind of push back. So this goes down to kind of protect the Holy Land as opposed to take the Holy Land. It's much smaller. You're talking about 13,000 Crusaders. This was keyed off by the fall of Odessa and the fight for that. They lose significant amounts of territory. The Seljuks take back much of their land. They do hold on to Jerusalem. We can call it a draw. They defended Jerusalem, but they lost a lot of territory in the process. So maybe that one's okay. But on to the third. Because the Third Crusade is probably one of the most fascinating ones for me. Because this time, they realized that in the first two crusades, they traveled overland. And as they traveled overland, um, they were very simply fleeced. Realizing this happened in the First and Second Crusade, this crusade endeavored to go by sea. Two, instead of putting out a massive call to just people, the new pope, so we are 40 years after the Second Crusade, again, completely new generation, he decides to call on kings. And this one was led truly by kings. And they are the powerhouses of European medieval society. They are Richard the Lionheart of England, who vastly expanded England's power under his father, Henry II. Of course, Philip II, the French king, who will actually consolidate and recreate France and the powerful kingdom that France will be. And of course, Frederick Barbarossa, who consolidated the Holy Roman Empire as a feudal system in this age. And they all think they're the leader of this crusade. These guys spent so much time fighting with each other that they never could pull themselves together. On top of that, they were put up against probably one of the greatest military minds of the medieval age, a talented, brilliant man named Saladin. He may have defeated them regardless, but their ineptitude in deciding who would be leader guaranteed their defeat. The Fourth Crusade. After the utter defeat of the Third Crusade, you have a new pope. His name is Innocent III. We will talk more about him on another date, but he needs to make a name for himself. And only 10 years after the defeat of the Third Crusade, he calls a new one. He calls specifically on a group called the Franks, who will come down and join this. But what they do is realizing they do not want to take the overland route that they know is so expensive. They contract with Venice, the city of Venice, to provide transportation for them. They contract with them to transport 35,000 people. Venice builds ships, they get supplies, it's a massive endeavor for them. The problem is 35,000 people don't show up. Only 12,000 people showed. The 12,000 people didn't have enough money to pay the Phoenicians what they had even contracted for, even to offset the cost of everything the Venetians had built. The leaders of Venice were stuck in a tough position. They negotiated this treaty. They negotiated this concept that they would bring great wealth to Venice, and now they're stuck holding the bill. So they do what they inevitably needed to do. They told these crusaders that they were not going to transport them, and that those crusaders owed them all the money. Well, you have now a group of crusaders, 12,000 of them, simply sitting there, waiting to try to get to the Holy Land to fight. The Venetians, who won't transport them, and we're in kind of a standoff. The Franks, the Crusaders, they don't want to go home. How embarrassing would that be? You talk about this great crusade and you're going to fight for the Holy Land and you're going to do all this stuff, and then you just turn around and come home. They give all their money to the Venetians. The Venetians give them all the supplies and their food. Okay, here, yes, you can have your food. Problem is they eat it all. And they're not going to the Holy Land. Now, you'll notice this little city of Zara over here. That entire Dalmatian coast, the Venetians had lost control of that. They wanted them back. The Venetians actually dominated over this area. So they asked the Crusaders, and the Crusaders agreed that they would go retake that city on the way to help them out. And that was part of the agreement of how the Venetians would transport them. Now, the Venetians never really had a plan to transport them because they did take Zara. But by the time all of that had been taken care of, it was winter and they couldn't sail. So they just invaded and attacked a Christian city. Remember why they were going to begin with? Anyways, onto the scene to save the day, if you will, comes a new guy named Alexius Angelus. And he claims that he is the rightful heir to the throne of Constantinople. And he tells them, the Venetians and the Crusaders, that he will give them 200,000 silver marks if they transport him to Constantinople and help put him back on the throne. They sail to Constantinople. You have a crusading army who invades the greatest Christian city in the world. They seize control of it. They put this Alexius Angelus back on power. He does pay them 100,000 silver marks, but they don't get it all. So they also raid in the streets and loot and pillage and take holy relics and everything else. And with that, the crusade ends. No Muslims were killed in the making of this crusade. The entire point was this was a revenge crusade after the loss of the Third Crusade. The goal was to go kill Muslims and take back Jerusalem. And then the crusades just keep going. Most of these, honestly, were actually crusades organized by Genoa and Venice and other merchant cities in an attempt to dominate and control the Mediterranean trade. All carried out or put forth by the various new popes of the age. All said and done, after nearly 200 years of intermittent warfare, the Holy Land was back under Muslim control. There now existed deep cultural and political rifts between the Islamic and Catholic worlds. It is in fact only those who promoted these crusades that benefited. The great Italian merchant cities of Venice and Genoa had solidified economic control of all the major Mediterranean ports. And of course, the Catholic Church and the papal authority had through this period consolidated influence across Europe. It does make you wonder what the point of the Crusades were.